Here's a problem every developer eventually hits. Your app collects timestamp data, and Postgres handles it fine until the table hits a few 100 million rows, and then everything falls apart. Now in this video, I'm going to show you how massive real-world systems handle this exact problem, using the most extreme example that I could find, which is an EV charging network. Now this generates over 630 billion rows of data per year, and I actually built my own charging network with hundreds of virtual chargers to show you exactly how this works and how you can use these same tricks in your own projects to speed up your database. Okay, so the US just crossed 250,000 public charging ports, and every single one of those ports is basically a computer with a network connection that never stops talking. Now all of these chargers speak a protocol called OCPP. Now that's the Open Charge Point Protocol. And if you look at what's actually flowing over the connection there, there's 4 types of data. Now first, you have meter values. So think voltage, current, power, energy. Now every charger sends a reading about 15 to 30 seconds from every plug around the clock. Now this is pretty heavy. This stream just never stops. It's always sending data. Now second, we have charging sessions. Now that's when you actually plug in a car. So when a car plugs in, a new session starts. Now when you unplug it, the session dies, and that meter reading from that session is going to decide what you get billed. So this is effectively the billing data. Now this is also the money, right? Because we're charging the customers this amount, so you cannot lose this information or you cannot get it wrong. Now third, status updates. So available, charging, faulted. This is how the network finds out that a charger in a parking garage just died, for example, right? And then fourth, we have the boring configuration data. So a model, firmware, how many plugs are there, you get the idea. Now think about scaling all of this up. A network with 10,000 chargers that's sending readings every 30 seconds generates about 20,000 rows of data per second, okay? So that's roughly 630 billion rows per year. And what makes that genuinely hard is that the readings and the billing data are completely different types of data, but they do actually have to live together. Because the moment a customer disputes a bill, you need both of them in a single query. So the question becomes, how do you actually store 630 billion rows of data? Now, option 1 is to use plain Postgres. So you have one big table, and then you have an index on the timestamp. And this works great at first, which is kind of what makes this dangerous. Because as the table grows into the hundreds of millions of rows, the index is going to stop fitting inside memory, the inserts are going to start slowing down, and every dashboard query is going to turn into a scan across the entire table that's literally the size of a hard drive. So at this kind of scale, this is going to actually happen in weeks, not in years. Now option 2 is what most teams usually do. So they split up the data. They put the readings in a specialized time series database, maybe something like InfluxDB, and they keep the billing data inside of Postgres. Now it sounds pretty reasonable. You have 2 tools that are each doing what they're good at. But here's the query that really kills this setup. Somebody disputes a $40 charge, for example. Now to answer that dispute, you need their billing record and you need the actual electricity readings from that charging session. Now that's a join between 2 different tables, but the billing record is inside something like Postgres and your readings are in another database. And you can't do an efficient join across 2 different databases. So now you're effectively writing a bunch of code that's going to query both sides, match things up, try to match the timestamps, and hope that everything agrees. And you maintain that code forever, which is quite annoying. Now option 3 is to throw all of this inside of something like MongoDB. Now it has time series collections, but there's no real compression and no way to skip data by time range. Now what that means is that your storage bill is just growing forever. And just by the way, this is not just an EV charger problem, right? IoT sensors, server logs, financial data, user analytics, right? Anything with a timestamp that's going to keep growing will eventually hit this same wall. Now this video is sponsored by Tiger Data. And that's because they built TimescaleDB, which is the standard open source solution to this exact same problem. And the important thing to understand is that TimescaleDB is not a new database that you have to learn. It's actually just an extension for Postgres, so you use the same SQL, same drivers, same tools that you already use, and you just enable it with literally one line. So what it does is it changes how your data gets stored under the hood, specifically for time series data like this. And real companies run exactly this workflow with TimescaleDB. For example, one energy company compressed 15 terabytes of data down to just 1 and cut their database bill from $9,000 per month just to 4. Now another one replaced 4 separate databases with it and got about 350 times faster queries. Now everything that I'm about to show you here in this demo that we're going to go into runs on Tiger Cloud, which is their managed platform. Now they have a free trial, there's no credit card, and you can get a database running in about 30 seconds. I'll leave a link to it in the description in case you want to check it out. But of course, let's get into the demo, and I want to show you how this actually works so you can see how you manage such massive amounts of data. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is show you all of this in action. So I've spun up a free service on Tiger Cloud, and I've written a simulator that acts like a real charging network. Now there's 500 virtual chargers, 875 plugs. I have them spread across many different cities. We have some that are fast chargers, some that are slow chargers, and virtual cars will actually plug in, unplug, start a session, stop a session. You get the idea. What I'm doing here is every second of real world time is simulating, or is 30 seconds of simulated time. And you'll see that we have like the network power. We have all the different chargers available here. I can click into them so I can see what's going on. If a charger is available, if a charger is faulted, I can press it and we can see what happened. And we get all of the logs and the data. Now it's streaming all of this information at once. And if I go here, we can see we have about 1,247 rows being added every single second to our timescale database. So it's continually growing in size while the simulation is running. Again, this is meant to kind of give you a sense of what would happen if we had even 10,000 chargers, but we'd have much more data streaming into this database. So right now I've got 23 million rows, and I want to show you what this simulation looks like and how we can handle this amount of data. So let's have a quick look at the database schema and the different tables that I created here. There's three main ones I want to go over. Now, table 1 is meter values, and this is the table that gets absolutely hammered with data because every reading from every charger is landing inside of this table. So there's hundreds of rows literally every single second forever. And what you can notice here is that this is just a normal regular Postgres table. The only thing that's special about it is just a few lines that I added underneath. So there's this line right here, create hypertable. Now what that line does is it tells TimescaleDB to automatically split this table into smaller pieces behind the scenes. Specifically, it does one piece per day. Now they call these chunks, and the reason this matters is pretty simple. When a query asks for yesterday's data, Postgres now only has to look inside yesterday's chunk instead of digging through the entire table. Now you don't need to manage any of this yourself. You literally just write this one line that I showed you here, and it's going to happen automatically, specifically for the time series data. Now table 2 is the charging sessions, and this is the one that includes all of the billing data. So it's one row per charging session. So who charged, when they started, when they stopped, how much energy they used, and then what they're actually going to get billed for. And look, this is a completely standard normal Postgres table. It has the primary key. We have the foreign key references, nothing special, right? And that's intentional because billing data isn't a huge amount of data that just keeps coming. It's normal relational data, and we can keep that under control. Now, the point is that both of these pieces of data can live in the exact same database, and in this schema, I can join this data together. And then table 3 is the status events table. Now, this is effectively the health data. So every time a charger changes state, available, faulted, charging, whatever, a new entry will land here. Now, we also have a hyper table because this can be more data than the billing one, right? We can have a lot of information here. Same thing, it's just one line, which makes it very fast for us to query. There's a few other queries and tables I have in here, but generally speaking, these are the three main tables that we need to be aware of. So if I go back to the simulation here, you can see it's still running, we're still collecting data, and this again is kind of a visual of what this would actually look like. Cars coming in, cars coming out, a session is finished, we're tracking all of the information, we're doing all of the sensor readings, and it's all at the exact same time being added to our database. At this point, 1,100 rows, 1,200 rows per second, continuously being filled up and added to the DB, which is going to get very large very fast. Then we have all of the metrics here, like I showed you, and if you want to see like a random bill, for example, from a user, we can run a query and it will pull it up. So you can see, for example, a random customer, when they plugged in, how long they were there, the charger they used, and then how much they were billed for, and it gives us the full sensor readings. Now at this point, if you're still watching, the obvious question becomes, okay, is using something like TimescaleDB actually better than Postgres? And if so, how much better is it? And I want to show you some real demos here so you can see exactly what the speed difference is by literally just enabling this one feature with TimescaleDB. So in order to do this, what I'm going to do is take the exact same data that I currently have. So I'm just going to pause the simulation, and I'm going to pipe all of that into a plain Postgres database that doesn't have TimescaleDB enabled. So it just doesn't have that one line that you saw when I was, defining the schema. So I'll press this button, we'll build out that database, which is going to take a few minutes, and then I'm going to run the same queries, the same joins, everything on this different type of data, and you're going to see what the speed difference actually is, and also how much space this takes up, because you'll see with TimescaleDB, it's a lot less. Okay, so the plain Postgres database finished building, and we can see right away that the sizes look like this, and I'm going to explain why. So in plain Postgres, 2.85 gigabytes, in TimescaleDB, 3.47. Now the reason why TimescaleDB is currently bigger is because I haven't yet compressed the table. Now in TimescaleDB, it has a native feature that allows me to compress any of the time series data, and it will make it significantly smaller. You can see we have 8 chunks already created because we have 8 days of data that have been filled up here, and it will automatically make a new chunk each day, but we haven't compressed anything. Whereas with plain Postgres, this is a fresh table, nothing's been inserted, it doesn't have any bloat in it, so that's why it looks a little bit smaller, and we can verify the same thing from the Tiger Cloud dashboard here, okay? So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna compress the hypertable, and I'm gonna show you how much space we actually save when this compression is enabled. So let's press the button. It's going to compress our hypertables. Now, just so you're aware, you can actually automatically compress the tables if you want. So for example, you can add a compression policy and you can define how you want to actually compress the tables. I didn't do that because it was going to mess up how I was filling this in the simulation. But now with the manual compression, you'll see in a minute how much space we're going to save. Okay, so it just finished the compression. It just did the first 6 chunks because of how I have it set up right now. But you can see we effectively went to about 30% of the original size, like 3.46, it's 1.23 now, just by running that compression. If we compress the other 2 chunks, then we're going to get another, 25% benefit and be under 1 gigabyte in terms of total size. So that's the first advantage, is the amount of space this actually takes up when the compression is enabled. Okay, now the next comparison I would argue matters a lot more, and that's actually querying the database. So what I'm going to do is just run a few queries here and show you how it compares when we do it in the TimescaleDB enabled database versus plain Postgres. So first I'm going to generate a fleet dashboard. So what this is going to do is go through all of the readings, work out the average power for every charger, and then show me the top 10 power readings. So it has to look through pretty much the entire table, and this is the query that every operations dashboard is going to run. So you'll see that when I run this, it's going to take a while because it needs to go on both the Postgres one, the normal one, and TimescaleDB. And you can see when we have a look here, this is the speed difference that we get. So notice this is the query that was ran, right? It's running every power reading in the table and getting them as an average per charger. In plain Postgres, it took nearly 17 seconds, which was stalling our result here. In TimescaleDB, it took 5.4 seconds, and using the continuous aggregate, which is something that I've set up in the database as well, we got about 1.7 seconds. So it's significantly faster, 10 times faster using that aggregate inside of TimescaleDB. And if I open this up, you can see the aggregate looks something like this, where effectively what we can do is create a materialized view that continues to get updated so that it's even faster for us to pull that data from by using the timescale data. Now, the idea with the continuous aggregate is that TimescaleDB just keeps a small summary table that has the hourly totals per charger, and then it updates that summary automatically as the new data is streaming in. So your dashboard never actually needs to look at all of the 24 million raw rows of data at once. It just reads the summary table, which is what makes it really fast. And the thing is, the summary table really is barely growing, which is why all of this is going to stay extremely fast, even when you get into billions of different rows. Now, the plain Postgres version here just continues to get slower and slower over time because no compression is occurring and it needs to read the entire database every single time. Now we can do the same thing here with a 1-day aggregate, and you'll see we get very similar results. Now you can see we get a very similar performance here. Postgres, 5.3 seconds, TimescaleDB, 1.9 seconds, and we get the same answer from both using a query like this. Okay, now the next comparison that I want to move over to is the billing dispute that I kind of started this video with. So imagine a customer calls and said this bill is wrong, I didn't use this much power, whatever. Now to settle that, you need 2 things. You need the bill, which lives in the sessions table, and you need what the meter actually recorded when that car was plugged in, which is in the readings table, which is buried in about 24 million rows of data. Now, if you remember earlier when I was mentioning the split setup where we had 2 separate databases and how you would have to stitch a bunch of code together in order to actually pull that data. Now here, what we can do is just run one single SQL query and we'll be able to get all of the information for the bill. So for example, if I pull just a random bill here, we'll have a look at it and you'll see that it will join the info together. Okay, so quite quickly, we get the response here. We have the session data, so the customer, the charger, when it was plugged in, and then we get all of the sensor reading data, which is showing up right here. Now, this shows exactly all of the sensor reading data. You can see we have 56 power readings, 1 for every 30 seconds during this 28 minutes, which gives us those 56 readings. We can check them, verify them, sum up all of the amount of power that we used, and we get the kilowatt hours right here to verify that the bill and the readings actually match. Now, just to be fair here, if you want to do simple stuff, like you just want to look up one charger's last reading, if you have a good index, plain Postgres will be very fast as well, okay? And the insert speed is going to be very similar. Now at 20 million rows, right, like Postgres can still survive, we can still get the information, but remember that we're talking about legitimate networks that could have billions, in the case of EV charging networks, 630 billion rows, right? Now that's 35,000 times more than what I just showed you, or approximately. And at that scale, the storage difference that I'm talking about, the read speed, right, the continuous aggregate, all of those aren't things that are just nice to have. They're literally the difference between a database that works and one that's going to fall over every few weeks when the data completely fills up. Now, just two quick things worth knowing. Everything you just saw is running on the smallest instance that Tiger Cloud offers. You can see I just have 2 gigabytes of memory, right? And it's using the smallest instance. It's also streaming from my machine over the public internet. Now, if you want, you can also have all of the old data automatically move over to cheap S3 buckets instead of staying all on this device, and it can still be queryable based on how Tiger Data sets this up. Now, Tiger also has an MCP connector, and this means that you can hook this database up to something like Claude Code or Cursor and have AI manage it automatically. So it can create services, run queries, all of that kind of stuff. And that's actually how I spun up this full project, that I just had Claude Code using the service for me, automatically adding the data. You get the idea. Okay, so my honest take after building all of this here is that if you're going to be working with time series data, enabling something like TimescaleDB is really just a no-brainer. It's literally just a few lines that you change inside of your SQL when you're going to configure this. It's open source. You can use it existingly with Postgres, so you don't really need to change anything. And of course, if you want all of this handled for you, you can do it inside of something like Tiger Cloud, which I'll leave a link to in the description. Anyways, guys, that's all I have for this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.